This week on the podcast, it's the sequel, 5 Things Business Owners Don't Worry Enough About. As if last week wasn't enough. Welcome to the Profit Cash Growth Podcast. This is the podcast for 6 and 7 figure business owners who are looking to grow a financially successful business. My co-host, Claire Hancott, is a finance director, chartered accountant and entrepreneur. And every week, I'll be exploring guidance and frameworks designed to help you increase your profits, improve your cash flow and grow your business. So the saying, a wife is always right, really came into play this week, didn't it? Because we went into London.
Did it?
Yeah. You probably don't know. I'm going to tell this story. And it's my humble way of saying thank you. We went into London this week, didn't we? And we only went for one night. So we packed a small suitcase. And
I know where this is going.
Yeah. And I like to travel, like, super blokey of me. I'm sure everybody else does this. I'm like, I wear the same trousers, I wear the same jumper. Like, I can't be bothered. I mean, I will take.
You just like to pack a toothbrush and a pair of pants, don't you?
Yeah, I will change my underwear. I mean, that is, but I'm not reached that point. I guess once I'm over 50, I might decide that's too much. But yeah, so packed up one of everything. And you said to me before leaving the house, I sort of said to you, I just can't be bothered carrying another pair of chinos and whatever else. And you said, what if you spill something on them? And I just thought, well, that's not going to happen. I'm in a meeting, like a sort of, businessy type meeting thing for 2 days. So that's just not going to happen. But then when we put all the case together, there was like a bit of spare space. So I just thought, why not? So I threw in a spare pair of chinos. Anyway, little did we know that we were going to end up in a Chinese ramen place with noodles and oily chili sauces flicking all over the place in the underground of a London pub on that night. Lo and behold, by the time I'd finished slurping in my bowl, I looked at you and I said, what?
You were covered in it. Thank goodness for my new trousers.
I said to you, thank goodness I packed another pair of trousers. And I actually meant, thank goodness you packed another pair of trousers.
Yeah.
So this is me saying thank you to you this week, Claire, because that's a big learning for me.
Despite what people think about me, a lot of people will think maybe my personality, I think the word forceful, I think is a forceful. I like to be front and centre and I like attention and things like that, but I'm a bloody good assistant, aren't I? Like, we do joke that we always call me the assistant, but I just kind of am silently there in the background making sure people have what they need when they need it. Yeah. That is my forte.
Although the busier you get, the worse you get at that, unfortunately. You really let yourself down of late. But we did have a few learnings from our London trip this week, didn't we? We learnt that when rents are really high, there's really clever ways of sharing your building, because the pub we went in had a Chinese restaurant on the ground floor and a Mexican restaurant on the first floor and the pub in the middle. What a smart way of splitting your rent. And they're all different businesses, so they just like sub it out, don't they? And like, you find this when you go to like the big cities around the world, that like you go underground under somebody's building and there's another business. And it's like, it's just like, we don't probably do enough of that outside of London, do we? I'm sure with the way that hospitality costs have gone recently, like more people will be doing more of that. And we also got to see Waymos in full action, didn't we? Which was
so good watching them. We were staying in the treehouse, so we were in quite a high. We were on like floor 14 or something.
Do you think anybody would know what the treehouse? You said it like it's a really famous hotel.
It's a hotel called the Treehouse, and we were on floor 14. So we were sort of like looking down over the Langham and some of like the Westminster, Portland Street area. And there were Waymos sort of everywhere, and it was quite fascinating watching them, because they very much, if you didn't know it was a Waymo, you would think it was a human driver, because they were like inching out slowly into traffic, and sort of, like when you cross a lane when it's not really your time to go, but you'll cross a lane and then hope that somebody else lets you into a gap. Then they were doing all of those kind of moves and techniques, weren't they? It was very impressive. And
I guess I've been quite negative about driverless cars coming into the UK, because I just think our roads very different to just saying, I'll stick it in a grid system in America. And our regulation. But there I was in central London watching these Waymos drive around central London, and it just works, doesn't it, I guess? So how long do you think they'll be till they get to Milton Keynes? Probably 20 years?
Well,
30?
you joke, but Milton Keynes is the central hub for where all driverless vehicles have been tested. It's where the government have put money into testing all the vehicles, because it's a grid system and it's fairly controllable, and it can be, like geo ring fence quite easily and things like that. So they've put a lot of investment here, and there's so much testing that's been going on for like 20 plus years. We were the first city to have those little Starlink robots that do the supermarket deliveries to your home.
We live outside of Milton Keynes, so it's like, I bet there'll be like some sort of geo fence where you can't go outside of it into like the actual little towns and things like that. So, but hopefully they're here soon. Anyway, should we move on to this week's news story week, Claire? Which
Let's
you've
do
got
it.
A shocker this week, haven't you?
I have.
Yeah. So the headline this week, not just the headline, but you brought us into this as well. But I say headline because you said it didn't hit the news, and for me it actually didn't hit the news, so I had to search for this, and I did find some stories. The one that I picked out was Companies House admits security breach that exposes directors' details, and this is the story that the corporate registry apologised after a system bug left personal data of millions of people visible for 5 months.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
This is really interesting because this hit some of the accountancy media last week, at the end of last week, and it caused a bit of carnage because Companies House basically went down immediately when Companies House found out about this. They took the system offline, so we couldn't file anything, and it was causing a bit of a stir in the accountancy world. Basically, since Companies House launched an update back in October 2025, there was a bug in their system, which basically meant when you own a company, you can log into Companies House and digitally edit your company register. So directors' details, file accounts, change your registered address, all of those things. Now, people might think, well, that's fine because you can search for all of this stuff on Companies House, but there's stuff that is in the background that is not publicly available. Stuff like as a director or a PSC, your date of birth, your email address, your home address, stuff that is not available on the public register. And basically, there was a bug in Companies House, which meant that by just simply using the backspace, you could get into those details of another company.
Yeah, it actually says that on the news story that for you basically press the backspace and it reveals the email address and all this personal data.
You're logged in. You're logged into their company. So essentially, if I logged into Profit Cash Growth and I wanted to, just view my company information as Profit Cash Growth, and then I said, I would like to add another company X, onto my login, because as an accountant you can have multiple logins. Anybody can have multiple companies, so you can have them all on one login. If you went to add a new company, it would prompt you and say, we need the authentication code, which is the password, if you like, the blocker from allowing people to access the information. Yeah. And you got to that screen that said enter the authentication code, and then if you click the backspace twice, it just logged you into that company anyway without ever entering the code. What I found, a couple of bits of this that I just found absolutely flabbergasting, to be honest, when I heard, is the accountant that identified this reported it to Companies House and received no response from them. So they eventually went to a media outlet instead, who was the person that then got in touch with a more senior contact at Companies House and let them know what was going on. So somebody tried to report it, but Companies House just ignored them. And then the other thing that I find more baffling is there's approximately 15 million user details that have been exposed in this security breach, and it's not hit mainstream media at all. It wasn't on the BBC, it wasn't on ITV.
And I said it's interesting, isn't it? Because when it's government department on government department, so the ICO, who's the governing department for data protection breaches, would need to govern against the Companies House. They're both government departments. You just wonder how much is covered up, don't you? I mean, because like you say, if it was any private company, the slightest thing, they're all over it, and the ICO is going to be all over them, and various other things. This, like you say, it was really hard to find these stories. It didn't hit my radar until you told me about it, and I had to search to find the stories about it. So it just didn't get surfaced heavily.
Look, it's fair to say the impact is low because, we use Companies House a lot and we'd never noticed that this was a bug that we could exploit. And it looks like you had to exploit it on a user by user basis. Yeah. It wasn't something where you could sort of get in a mass download information about people and things like that. But
set an AI agent on it, couldn't you?
You potentially, if you'd identified it, you potentially could have set an AI agent on it. Yeah, but I think that it's the real life security impact on individuals. If we think, for example, there is real reasons why some individuals really cannot have their information publicly available on the register for security reasons. For example, if you work for a company that, might do animal testing or something like that, which is highly controversial, and we're not getting into the wrongs or rights of it, but there would be people that would literally come to your house and possibly, threaten your life if they found out your home address, and this type of information has been exposed and it's just been sort of swept under the carpet like nothing had happened. And I just think that's quite appalling, really.
I was going to ask you, what can you do with this information realistically, other than threatening attacks?
Well, if you've now got somebody's home address, you've got their home address, their email address and their date of birth, that's quite a fraud risk in terms of being able to impersonate them. Yeah. So, that's enough to open a bank account, for example.
Well, you've said conclusively this happened. The news story does say that all of those bits of personal information, in brackets, may have been visible to third-party users.
No, it was visible. Well, it was visible.
Companies House said may have been visible.
Yeah, of course they do, but it was visible.
Allegedly visible.
Yeah.
How'd you say it? Brilliant. Thanks for that. I was going to say interesting story. It wasn't that interesting, but it's it's interesting more how that didn't get surfaced in a big way. And that's what's, I think, more interesting. Like, one rule for them, one rule for another.
15 million people, 15
Exactly.
million people in a data breach and nothing.
Anyway, I think, as if you haven't got enough to worry about, as we'll find out in this next segment, don't worry too much about Companies House. Let's move on to this week's deep dive.
I just realised the irony of what we're doing today. We're literally doing like the gloomiest podcast ever, aren't we?
I'm just thinking I wonder what you were laughing at then. It's like, I thought I did a really good segue then, but like actually the segue was a bit messy. But anyway, we're doing, as you said, this is not a series last week.
It's a two-parter.
It's a sequel. This is the sequel to last week. So last week we talked about the 5 things that business owners worry too much about. This week we're doing the inverse of that, because we see this a lot. And this is 5 things that we think that business owners don't worry enough about in their businesses.
Basically, we're saying to you, if you're sleeping well at night, we're going to stop that happening right now. We're going to give you a list of things you should be worrying about.
Yeah, exactly. And I might just slip an extra one in just for good measure at the end. Don't start laughing again. Last week I was coming in their ears. This week I'm slipping it in. Today, let's talk about number 1. So let's go straight into it. Number 1, we're going to talk about one that's very specific to your world of accounting, Claire, and that is cash flow timing.
Yes. It may seem quite obvious to some business owners, particularly if you've been caught out by this before, but just because you've got a profitable business doesn't mean that your cash flow is going to be okay. And also this can work vice versa. We've got some businesses that we work with that, particularly if you can get like subscription payments for like a 12-month subscription up front, for example, that you've got loads of cash coming in, but you're not profitable. So cash doesn't equal profit and profit doesn't equal cash. And conflating those two things, or thinking that because you're looking at your P&L every month, you know what's happening in your business and you're financially sound, that's a big mistake.
Yeah, I think it's probably actually more so the other way around, which is, you know, the default position is to run your business from your bank account, isn't it? And
no, I think most of our business owners are quite good at looking at their P&L,
right,
and then their bank balance,
and then they ask you this same question over and over again. Why haven't I got the money
where's
in the bank?
Where's the money gone?
You sound making this profit, but where's all the cash gone? Forgetting that it's all tied up in stock.
Like looking at your bank balance is not managing your cash flow.
No, because there's always money tied up in your business as well, isn't there? And there's whether that's through, you know, people ready to pay you, or whether it's through stock, or whether it's through just working capital, whatever.
Delayed tax bills,
just
everybody's got like a quarterly tax bill.
I remember like I used to drive you nuts about this, didn't I? In terms of like, spell it out to me. I don't understand it. Why is the cash difference? Why doesn't it make a difference? It's just like, it was like painful to get my head around years and years and years ago. I mean, it still is painful sometimes because you just want the number that's on the screen, really, but it doesn't happen. So the first one's cash flow timing. If you're not worrying about that, you need to start worrying about it because it's important. The second one that I've got here is the quality of their business model. I don't think anywhere near enough people worry about the quality of their business model. And that's because a bad business model can, frankly, if you scale a business and it's got a bad business model, you're effectively scaling a problem, aren't you, Claire?
Absolutely. You just make the problem bigger and bigger and bigger. And the bigger the problem, the harder it is to resolve.
The harder it is to unravel. Yeah. And if you build a business model that ends up very big on scale in terms of turnover, but absolutely tiny in profit, you actually have very little to reinvest in actually fixing the problem later down the line as well. So you've got a double whammy. Can you think about any examples of any particular sectors or business models that have this, that you come across this more often than not, where the business model isn't right or is just generally challenging for that sector, and then as they scale it gets even more challenging?
I think there are,
construction's always one, isn't it?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's
sectoral problem.
It's a sectoral problem. You can generally sum it up as businesses with low margin.
Yeah.
So for example, any business where you're acting as like a middleman. So if you're just selling something and you're subbing the work out and you've got sales coming in, so like a freight provider, or maybe you're selling energy or something like that, that normally creates this problem. But typically what I think people don't think about is when they go on this transition and sort of when you're scaling up to sort of 500k to $1 million turnover, really a lot of your focus is on turnover. You are right. You get to this horrible kind of point between 500k and $1 million where you're not a small business anymore and you've got overheads to pay, but the overheads are probably too great for your turnover.
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And so you get this really horrible middle ground where you kind of you're probably doing more turnover than you've ever done, but you're making no profit. And that's because there's something fundamentally wrong with your business model, because you priced everything and planned everything based on being this tiny business where it's just you and maybe one or two other people in your business and you've got no overheads. And so really from day one, your business model has got to be able to handle more scale. You've got to be able to handle a back office function and pay people. And so all of that needs to sort of be priced into your business and thinking about long-term cash flow.
You see this all the time, don't you, as people grow, where they have, let's say, if you use like a physical location of anything, because it's the easiest way to resonate with this. You see this where someone has a physical location, they're like, yeah, I'm making 40% profit on this location. And then they open the second one and that whole business gets diluted to like 20% profit. And then they open the third and they've got a real problem because they need to put an area manager in. Before you know it, they're down at 5 or 10% profit. That's a challenge. And you also see this in things like customer acquisition costs, where somebody hasn't done the maths right, and actually the cost of acquiring a customer, because it's like they're churning too quick or something like that, actually just you're just growing a problem. And you see this a lot with companies like that go on to like Dragonstone and things that go and they've just got a business model, they're scaling, but it's just it's costing more to generate the customer than the customer's giving them over its lifetime.
Yeah. And the classic one also is basing like your customer acquisition costs off your customer's turnover and not the actual profit that the customer delivers and things like that. So, you know, if you're paying like £1,000 for a lead, but the profit that you make, you know, you might pay £1,000 for a lead and get 20k turnover.
Yes.
But if you actually only make £500 profit from that customer, then you're buying a loss every time you take on a new customer. It's a loss for you. So it's things like that you really do need to map out, like the different, on a high level, like the different points of your strategy. So how do customers flow into your business? How do you serve them? And what are the different cost elements to each area of your business model? When does cash flow through each area? So that you can make sure that every element of your business properly from start to finish is profitable and is scalable, and it is suitable from a cash flow perspective as well.
We could talk about this as an entire podcast episode. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to do that. We're going to put a pin in this because I'm just going to go on to the next thing. I think this is an entire episode in itself. So we will come back to that. The third thing that we think business owners don't worry about enough is their funding strategy more broadly. So tell me more about this one, Claire.
We see a lot of businesses, you know, the type of businesses that we work with, they're not a tiny business anymore, but they're not yet a big business. And they've generally been bootstrapped. Maybe they've got some limited finance, like asset finance or something like that. And they're not really thinking that maybe investor statistics and banking statistics, you know, things like
matter to them,
debt to equity ratio or free cash flow or return on investment or, I don't know, in interest service ratio, you know, all of these types of things that probably are not even on your radar that you know are a thing because you think that they might belong in the corporate world or a different world that you're not at. But the reason why we say this is really, really important to understand is that you've got these operational KPIs, ratios, numbers, whatever you want to call them, that you're running your business on a day-to-day basis, and they're going to help you run your business, grow your business, and make your business profitable. But at some point in your business journey, you are going to need to fund something and or exit your business. And it's all these additional sort of funding ratios that come into play. And so you might not think that they're relevant at the moment because you don't have any debt in your business, but let's have a look at them and see, okay, if you did apply to a bank, would you get lending? If you did look for investment in your business, maybe you want to sell at some point. If you did look to do these things, what would these ratios look like and are they good enough? Do they get you the result that you need?
It's preparing for the things that you, even if at the point where you do it, you think, oh, I'll never need that. I don't intend to grow a business. It's that big, that's that.
You just
never know. And it's good to know that you're building with the right things in mind. A really good example of this in the property world, because that's, you know, a world I'm very adept with, is when you buy a property with cash rather than a mortgage. And it's really important to actually just run the property by a mortgage broker anyway, to make sure that if you ever need to get a mortgage on that property, that property is easily mortgageable. So you have this situation where people get themselves really stuck where they buy a property that's you couldn't get a mortgage on, or if you did, it would be a very, very high rate. They get it for a great price, so they pay cash for it, and then they realise later down the line when they try and mortgage it that they can't get a mortgage on it.
Yeah, it's completely unmortgageable and you're stuck. So this is really about, you know, absolutely every month you're not going to sit down and we're not, you know, if you're a business at the moment doesn't have funding and doesn't have funding on its horizon, we're not going to be speaking to you about these ratios every month, but maybe a couple of times a year, let's run these ratios. Let's make sure you understand them. Let's make sure you understand the levers and drivers behind what can move them in a certain direction, so that you are prepared when you need to make that decision and when you're ready to make that next step. Because what you don't want to do is be in a situation where you're faced with an amazing opportunity that you can't get funding for because you've just made a decision about something 6, 12, 18 months ago that's really now completely taken this opportunity off the table for you.
Yeah, totally agree. So that's number 3, your funding strategy. Number 4 in the 5 things that business owners don't worry enough about is, I've put it down as over-reliance on themselves. But what I just probably mean this kind of key person of risk in your business situation that I don't think people think anywhere near enough. And we've done a lot of talking about this week, haven't we? About how, about all the benefits of, deleveraging yourself out of your business and what that looks like. And we've been looking at it from the key angle of increasing the multiple potential sale value of your business, but actually just operationally in the way that your business runs across all different things, that, an over-reliance on yourself is such an important area to worry about that I don't think most people think about.
I also look at this from a different angle. Like, I look at this coming from my numbers angle, that there are some things that I still do in my business, for example. I still do payment runs in my business. And the reason I do it is because we hardly have any ad hoc payments. Obviously, most of our stuff's on direct debit because it's all software subscriptions and stuff. And then we have payroll. So for us to actually have to pay a supplier is quite unusual.
Yeah.
So I do it all the time. And you challenged me the other day and you said, why don't I hand it over? And I said, well, because it only takes 5 minutes and it's going to take me way longer to show somebody how to do it and check up on them that they're doing it properly and that I've handed it over correctly and I'm comfortable to completely let go of it. But there's a cost to that, which therefore doesn't get factored into, coming back to point 2, doesn't get factored into my business model. That what happens when I'm ready to completely step out of my business and put a new MD in it, I'm not going to want that MD doing payment runs. So that isn't costed into my business model, and that therefore also becomes this bigger problem.
Yeah, that example is not what we'd call the low-hanging fruit, is it? Because that, like you say, you keep hold of it because it really is like a 2-minute job. But eventually you need to get rid of everything to systemize your business and make it, work without you, and therefore highly saleable, highly defensible if you got hit by a bus tomorrow, or not. I don't mean like died. I just mean like hit by a bus and taken out for a few months.
Why are you smiling so much?
I wasn't smiling.
It's like your face just lit up at the thought of me being hit by a bus.
It's ridiculous. But there's other things, like I'm thinking about just like decision. I don't want to give anything away. I'm going to talk about this later, but decision bottlenecks.
Yeah.
They can be caused by you holding on to a set of reins to do with something. We spoke to a guy the other day who has a business with a lot of machinery, and it's like he's still like jumping in, fixing a set of machinery, but openly says there's no reason why I can do that because the others can do it as well. They're just not prepared to take the last step of actually just doing it because of fear of making a decision, maybe stepping on your toes because you've guarded that decision-making process. So there's so many angles and benefits on your business becoming less reliant on yourself that it is an area that if you're not worrying about this, you should be worrying a little bit more about.
I've challenged myself based off the conversations that we've been having over the last week or so to write down every week one thing that I did that I shouldn't do. So either it's something that I haven't handed over to my team yet.
Jesus, that must have been a long list.
No, just one thing a week.
I know, this will keep you going for about 8 years.
Forever. I'll retire with a list. No, this is one thing that either I go to do and I think,
aren't you?
I go to do it and I think I shouldn't do this, or I've handed something over but I'm still dipping in for some reason. And so I've just really challenged myself to be way more mindful of it so that, over time I can just start to hand a lot more things over, because it's also like, I don't hand some things over because I think, well, this individual task as a solo thing might not be very big, but by doing this, I see X, Y, and Z. And so then you start to go down this bit of a rabbit hole. So I'm starting on this marathon mission now to hand over and step back from one thing a week. I
like the way that it's a different approach. With you, it's like, I shouldn't be doing this. Whereas with me and my team, it's like, I ain't doing that. And it's like, throw it at them. It doesn't matter however you get there, you just get there. Great. So over-reliance on yourself. Number 5, which is the final one, is skill stagnation. What I mean by this is...
Oh, excuse me, what I mean by this?
Well, go on then. What you mean by this?
Well, no, go on.
Go on. Look at you. What I would say about this is the never stop learning. I just think business owners aren't on that ever pursuit of learning. I think they start their business. This comes back to the reliance on themselves thing. They start their business. They're at the top of the tree. So they know everything. They're the best and everybody else falls in line, rather than approaching it as in, I've opened the door to my business. I've never been a business owner before, so I start at the bottom and I know nothing. And it's a totally different logical way to start. The day you set up that business, chances are, if you, and this doesn't apply, if you've launched 10 businesses, sold them for multi-millions of pounds, then you're opening your 11th, totally different. But guess what? I bet in 99% of cases, the people that listen to this podcast, they've come from a job or come from somewhere else, they've turned the keys to their first business, walked in through the door, and if they have any other attitude other than, I'm starting from nothing and I now need to build my skills up from here, then they are deluding themselves, aren't they, I would say, when they're starting a business.
Look, what this means to me is that what got me from A to B will not get me from B to C and will not get me from C to D. So you've got to keep, I feel like I'm quite content running the businesses that I've got now. I kind of feel like I've got my shit together. And if my business was to stand still,
You'd be fine.
I'd be fine.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't need to keep pushing my skill set and keep learning new things, but that's not what I want to do. I want to have a bigger business. I want to get a £10 million business under my belt. Like,
hang on, last week you said £5 million business.
Well,
literally last week you said 5 million. This week you've said 10. Do you know where you got? Have you? I haven't even put start with the end in mind. That is another one that's good on you.
Anyway, so my point is that the challenges that come your way will constantly be different, and
absolutely
a lot of our thinking this week has come because we went to Dan Bradbury's CEO Mastermind, didn't we? And he described it as there was a moment at the start, because it was your first time going to the event, and I've been to several before. And when you saw the agenda, you were a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure. I know this stuff. I'm not sure I'm going to get value out of it. And I was like, just give it a go, because yes, I know this stuff. I studied this stuff in a textbook before, but I guarantee that you will think about this thing this differently to how you've ever thought about it before. Yeah. And somebody else said something similar in the meeting, and Dan described it really well. And he said it's like going up a mountain. He said, when you get to the north side of the mountain, it's the same. You're looking out over the same thing that you've looked out on before, but your view is slightly different now because you're at a different point on the mountain. Yeah. And that's what we need to remember, is that we revisit the same thing. So we just did this basic task on like the 3 M's, your market, your media, your message. So nothing groundbreaking from a strategic perspective.
Before, like it's like that type of thing. It's what I've said to you before about why I read books every year. And it's like, that's a Dan Kennedy model. And I read the Dan Kennedy book, and then I read it every few years. So, and every time you read it, you analyze it totally different because you're at a different state. Assuming you're growing, because you wouldn't read it different if you're staying still, but assuming you're growing, you're going through different challenges, you reread it as and that's why like the legendary frameworks stand the test of time.
And so this isn't about necessarily learning new skills. It's not about going out and trying to find a new course and adding a new string to your bow constantly. It's just about polishing what you've already got. Sometimes,
absolutely.
That sitting and doing the same task every quarter or every year could be really, really valuable to your business because you're constantly looking at it through a different lens.
You are a convert now. Are you officially a convert?
I am officially a convert.
I've converted you, that I'm not wasting my time reading the same handful of books, key books. And we're going to do my golden shelf at some point once I finish reading my final one book.
This is interesting because I do have this thing. I would never watch a film more than once. I'll never read a book more than once. And
film buffs will fight you on that because they'll say you'll see that film differently the next time. And people do say this about films, don't they?
It's very unusual for me to watch something more than once. I've got to love it, like love it to sit and watch it again, because I get bored really easily. I've got a very short attention span. I get bored very easily. But this even started to make me think, maybe if I reread that book that I thought was shit, would I think about it differently now? Because at the time it wasn't right for me. It wasn't right
for you. It didn't fit. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Brilliant. So that's number 5. That's skill stagnation. Now, I've got a bonus one because I know said this is 5 things, but really
just for our audience, this is not a bonus one. Why? This is Claire and Simon had an argument over which 5 should make the list,
and
then
really want this one.
You just printed out the podcast notes, and we've gone with 5 and a bonus.
And a bonus, yeah, exactly. Because I think this, for me, this one's just, I think, game changing. I don't think people think about this enough. I've called this decision speed, but I think decision making as a whole is just so important. And I think, I summed this up to you when you did the 1,000-day episode that we did about how do you have your 1,000 days on the business rather than in the business. And decision speed is one of the things, like being able to make hundreds of decisions a week rather than procrastinating and having only made 10 at the end of the week on your business, just makes a massive, massive difference. And it's about getting confident with reversing decisions. It's about getting confident with failure and all of those type of things that makes kind of the whole decision-making thing. And the reason that I hold this one really dear is people always ask me quite a lot, and I've never had a really good answer because everyone's looking for a silver bullet. So they're always like, you've done X, Y, and Z. You've done more than 99% of people will ever do, Simon. So what's the magic reason? What one thing have you done? And of course the answer is there isn't a one thing. It's a combination of compounding of a million little decisions, is what I would always say. As I say, ultimately there's a compounding of thousands and thousands of decisions that are, broadly speaking, 51% right.
Now, the reason that this didn't make the original top 5 is because we had a bit of a debate over this, and I said I don't believe it's decisions. I think it's actions that actually make all the difference, because I can make a million decisions, but if I don't do anything about it, none of them matter. But maybe they do go hand in hand, and that's maybe why it's a bonus one. It's a bit more of a discussion point. But I think you're right about the speed that you move at, the velocity is really, really important.
Yeah, and we were talking about this with one of our companies recently as well. Often we're always fighting against far bigger funded companies and various other things. You're never going to beat them on investments in their products and services. So you have to out execute them. It's the only thing that you can win is by out executing, by moving faster, by moving quicker, building communities, whatever that is. So for me, that's my bonus one, is decision speed or decision making. Brill. What do you think about that then, Claire? Useful? How many of those do you, honestly, how many of those would you say you don't worry enough about? So how many of those do you think you do honestly fall into the camp of most business owners who don't worry enough about?
Definitely number 3, funding strategy.
Yeah. Is that because you feel like most business owners, I'm not there yet, so I'm not thinking about it or worrying about it?
I think I have quite a blasé approach to this because, we've got a few businesses behind us and one of them's got quite significant assets in it. And so I often just look at that and I think
it's a moat around it.
Yeah. If we needed cash, we'd just leverage it from there. Yes. And maybe I am being a bit blasé about it actually. And so, I think as an annual exercise for us, it would be good to sit down and have a look at that. And definitely also, I hate to say this, so people can be like, but Claire, you're an FD, cash flow timing. We've got cash flow reserves behind us. So from that perspective, it's not on my radar. And
understand.
And so, I think that I probably fall into the trap that everybody does is I don't need to look at it this month because it's not a problem. And it's okay, no, let's set these regular check-ins so it can't become a problem. And that's the bit that I'm not very good at.
You don't have to, you don't have to go deep on them.
Yes.
But it's worth ticking the box. Say, do you know what? Even if I come out of that and I think, there's nothing to learn from, there's nothing to change, I've just reviewed and I've ticked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Brilliant. Right. Well, let's move on to this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra.
And I've got this week's Profit Cash Growth Extra. It's actually quite apt because you asked me a question about this and somebody else was having a discussion about this on LinkedIn as well. And it was AI note-taking. And we use a platform called Fathom AI Note Taker. And the beauty of this is it's completely bloody free. So basically, sign up
for how long?
Sign up to it's been free for years.
I know. So how do they make money?
This Fathom Note Taker, basically you sign up to your account and it automatically, if you link it to your calendar, you literally just log in and do it once and it's there forever. It automatically pops up every time you have a meeting. So it will attend the meeting as an attendee, it will record the meeting in full and it will take notes for you. At the end of every meeting, you then get an email and it will summarize the meeting and it will have a link so that you can click and go back and watch the video, download the transcript. What I particularly like about Fathom, 2 really good features of it, is that firstly, you can tell it the purpose of the meeting and therefore it hones the contents of the actions and the summary that it gives you. So for example, if you're doing a discovery call, a sales call with somebody, you're looking to pick up on pain points and requests that they make and buying signals, all of those types of things. Yeah. But if you're having an internal meeting, then you're probably looking to pick up on different things. So you can set what the purpose of the meeting is and it will adjust the AI summary that it gives you based off that. And this is not a shit AI summary. This is a very good AI summary.
It's mind-blowing.
Good.
I mean, I've used Google, Gemini and used various different ones and they're just like pretty dog shit, actually. Honestly, this is just like, it's mind-blowing. And then obviously it also records the whole meeting, so you can just watch back tonality and everything. If you need to, you can share it with the rest of your team. But
that was
the summaries are so good, you don't need to watch them.
That was the second thing that I was also going to say is what's really good about, even on the free plan, if anybody signs up with like a @Profit Cash Growth email address, then they can access the videos. So you can lock them down if you want to, but as default, I can say share everything with the team. So, you know, for example, when we're onboarding a new client, I say to the finance manager or the FC that it's been allocated to, I'm like, here's all of the conversations I've had with the client. Please go back and watch the videos. Please go back and understand what the client's like, understand what's important to them, understand what I've promised them. And so it's just a really, really brilliant feature. Long term, we will be trying to maybe build something in our own custom chat GPT, because we talked about this a little bit before about getting some sort of CRM in place so that we can automatically link to the transcript, so that we can be searching the transcript as like almost like a live CRM database for the customer. But we're not quite there yet. It's not working.
I think step one, we know the volume of data is going to be so important. We can work out how we use that data later down the line, but from today, we need to start capturing as much of it as possible.
And that's what we're trying to do. And
that's kind of the key, isn't it? Brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us for another week's podcast. Hope you enjoyed this. As always, if you feel like you might have outgrown your current accountant, you'd like to work with Claire and the team at Profit Cash Growth, you can approach the website profitcashgrowth.com. On there, you can book a discovery call, speak to Claire, and lots of other goodies on there. If you'd like a copy of Claire's book for free, Profit by Numbers, really, really good read. Just go over to the website, pop your details in there, and we'll pop one in the post to you. And as always, if you could share this with one business owner friend, that'd be great. Make sure you're following it on whatever app you listen to us, and we will see you again next week.